Lovely. So our sequence for this structure is we identify a topic, and we have that on slide 6, the prompt. And the last workshop that we did on this, we invited everybody, whoever had experience on the topic that felt they could contribute, into the bowl. And we actually had a very large bowl. So for this session, because there's a smaller number of us, and because we want to get as much value as we can out of Anna, Fisher, and Paul in terms of their experience for us, I'm actually going to keep the bowl just Anna, Fisher, and Paul. And if there is really a strong burning desire to join the bowl, like you have a lot to share in terms of tech hosting, just privately message Michelle, and we'll have room for one more fish after Anna, Fisher, and Paul kind of dialogue a bit first on the prompt. So step 2, everyone except the fish, we're going to turn off our video and we're going to switch to speaker view. And the speaker view will help you see who's talking much better than if you keep it in gallery view. You'll just see a lot of black screens and Anna and Fisher over here, and it's kind of not really the same experience. So this is how we're adapting this model for an online space. And then after about 10 to 15 minutes on the fish sharing their experience around the prompt, we're going to invite the outside circle to generate questions for the fish in chat. And then we're going to do a chatterfall. So we'll ask you to hit return when we say go, and then all your questions will come up. And the fish will have a bit of time to read through and think on some of those questions and then respond in kind. So that's our basic sequence of steps and timing. So let's have everybody who's not a fish turn off their video screen. And like I said, go to the upper right corner of your screen and switch from gallery to speaker view. And that way, when Anna or Fisher or Paul or myself as Mr. Prompty Guy speaks, we will see it come up on the screen. So I'm seeing folks do that. That's lovely. Okay. So on slide 6, we have our prompt here. In your experience, what has been the good, bad, ugly, and lovely of tech hosting? Anna, Fisher, Paul, how's it been?
I unmuted myself just so there would be like breath going.
Yeah. And then I have been reveling in the fact that we're not tech hosting this session.
It's like so freaking awesome. Feels glorious. Definitely. Yeah, it's really good. Okay, can I just also make a note that so it's really enjoyable that we're not in charge of the tech hosting and that Michelle is dealing with every single thing that always happens every single time, including like Fisher sending her prompts that she's supposed to respond to while she's doing all of the tech hosting. It's really hilarious and very enjoyable. So go Michelle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, where do we even start? I don't even know.
I mean, one place to maybe start. Go ahead, you're about to say something. Well, I'm thinking back to March 10th or something. And for us, at least, a very rapid transition from preparing to do a bunch of work in person to all of a sudden having to rearrange ourselves. And I know at least Anna and we've like accidentally accumulated a bunch of experience working online and virtually with groups that we didn't realize was deliberate or intentional. And so it was accidental, big time. Mm-hmm. And it was that first week of trying to move things online, for me at least, trying to like take what was tacit experience or knowledge and make it explicit in a more structured, careful, stable way was super anxiety producing. Oh my God, I was a fucking mess that first week. Sorry, I was a total mess. I was like, I need to control everything.
I mean, it was intense, y'all. It was real intense. Like, yeah, it was, yeah. We work together all the time. And I guess that's one perspective that maybe is different about the way that we work is that we work together all the time. Like we're business partners. We work together. So we happen to be about to get on a flight to Europe. And so we're in the same place, you know, like, you know, and so all of this has been happening in the same physical location, as well as, you know, and so we work together all the time in person, very fluid, very smooth. Even doing design sessions and large sessions is usually smooth. But suddenly there's a pandemic in the world. There's a lot of cognitive load on this collective uncertainty and trauma. Everyone's trying to get online. Everyone's trying to learn. And we feel like a certain pressure to perform okay, or at least reasonably, for the people that we've said we were going to support and we were going to do stuff with. And so, of course, you know, we get real uptight, you know, Fisher gets real uptight. And I did too.
And I'm a Virgo, so it doesn't help much.
Yeah.
I
So
don't
like
even know
stress
what it
behaviors,
means.
it's pedantic. It's like you're
Okay.
pedantic.
Okay,
You know,
fair.
we can get very, so like, I think one big thing that I think is lovely, ugly, bad, good, is that everyone's stress behaviors always come out when we're running anything. And now suddenly we're all in our stress behaviors while we're going online, and it's like weirdly amplified. And we have this like data coming at us in new forms that we're not used to. Like the chat flow is like, everybody's always chatting with each other during workshops. Always. That's always happening. We're watching 80% of it flow by us, and we're watching somebody's expression, right, as that's happening, and like in a way that we don't. And I think that our cognitive loads are just, I mean, it's just really a lot.
One of the things that's coming up for me as you're saying that is that, I mean, again, this is both good, bad, ugly, lovely, all those things. It's such an opportunity for learning about your own anxiety behaviors. Because, I mean, for me, when I'm tech hosting, it is all about how do I create the smoothest possible experience for my participants while I am flipping my lid, right? While everything is going wrong. How can and so there's that layer there of like, okay, I want to make sure this is all good. There's that layer of like, oh my God, I can't build. And then there's that layer of like, okay, because of what's coming up for me, that's interfering with my ability to help people. How do I manage that? It's like a huge, like the tech hosting pieces for me are really about, yes, it's about understanding the technology. It's about understanding how to use the tools smoothly and create a good user experience, but it's also a huge amount of self-management.
Yep.
And so in some cases about reassuring whoever you're partnered with, right? So that they can focus on the piece that they're doing.
Oh yeah, strong agree, Paul. Like that feels like maybe the most important, like that's the headline. And look, like super happy to talk about all the tangible, tiny little things that we all choose to do at different times. Like we will get to the pragmatics, right? Like those tangible things are really sweet actually, and fun and gamey.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like, oh, look, you can put an emoji in your name, and you know, like that stuff feels like play, right? That's like that's sweet. But I think everyone uses Zoom or whatever technology they're using a little differently. Everyone's got stylistic options that they choose to use or not. Like there's no one way to do it, right? So it's about how we learn. And I think I'm going to say a lovely thing here. Here's the really lovely thing about all of this is the moment to learn how to do virtual work, because everyone is so much nicer to you right now because they're all trying to do the thing at the same time. So like use this moment to like make the mistakes in front of everybody, because everyone is learning it and failing forward as a community, and folks are real generous about it. So I think that's very lovely. Like it's so sweet. So
the empathy factor right there is huge right now, which is really great. And I joke, everybody has, I don't know, this is the thing I'm working on, right? That everyone is some sort of superhero when it comes to facilitation. Like they have they channel one of these iconic sort of beings. And apparently my superhero for facilitation is Daredevil. I am the man without fear. So this has been all just like, I don't know how this works. Let's schedule a public thing so that I can learn how to do it in front of everyone. And that's my approach to it. And I'm feeling incredibly grateful that this is actually there's such an opportunity to do that, right? That there is that empathy that is out there. And because it's only by doing it, you actually really get it into your fingers and your brain and your pancreas, wherever else you get it.
Absolutely. I just want to jump in there because I'm hearing a lot of excellent things from you guys that are making me think about, you know, the tech hosting side and the partnering with the host side, all of these different aspects. I'm curious, what about those challenging moments that you've had in the last month has really been kind of an eye-opening thing for you in terms of, you know, looking at the tool set that you have in front of you? Has there been some tools and approaches that have been really useful for helping you kind of assuage some of that anxiety and feel like you're able to transition your practice online?
I'm going to say the annoying thing and say, pen and paper. Okay, this is like a thing, right? Like no one like, yeah, like turns out like everyone is like, thank you for having me look over at a piece of paper and a pen, and like, thank you for like also playing music. Thank you for this. Like, let's color together. Like, just, I think there's like the most simple stuff, and it's really easy to do online that you would overlook, is some of the stuff that people are finding incredibly valuable. And so I think that is really important for us to look at. I also think like, Michelle's doing it today. I can see it in the slides, and you two you're probably just all doing it together, but chat scripts, relying on chat, like as simple as you can get, to me is like often the best thing, because people don't always respond super well to a whole bunch of complexity actually on the participant side. And so minimalism and kind of design simplicity has been really helpful. And so we don't need to use 800 platforms. It turns out we could probably do a lot of what we're doing over the phone really meaningfully. And so I think just start at a really level of simplicity that is going to be, turns out, an act of generosity in my mind for a lot of people. And I think the other thing is the other tool that I would say is most often being used right now in the successful sessions that I'm part of and I'm seeing, is like, I know I'm saying all these nonsense, but like humor. Like if you can't look like you're like kind of relaxed and able to make a joke, people are going to be freaked out in your session. Like if you are like so tense and like looking so, right? Like, if, you know, it doesn't matter if you're like faking it. It doesn't matter if it's like ultimately a lie, but like, you know, we got to try to look like we're at least somewhat having a good time. Like if I am so freaked out that like, I'm so like, no one's going to be able to relax, you know? And so these are like the things that are just easy to overlook. And I swear there are tangible things that we'll talk about, I promise. But like, it's the human stuff that actually might be more helpful.
It's
you know?
true.
And I think it's the so I come from a software background, and I come from the tech world. And so I think about exactly the sorts of things you're talking about, Anna, but I think about it from a user experience lens. What is the experience that I'm creating for my participants, either as a if I'm designing a session or I'm hosting a session, and how can I make that experience as accessible and as smooth as possible so that they are spending the time engaging with the material and the content and each other, and not spending that cognitive load on trying to learn how the confusing tool works. And so I absolutely agree. There's a principle from extreme programming back in the day where we talked about try the simplest thing that could possibly work, right? Not even like, you might not even be sure it's going to work. Try it, see what happens. Because any new tool that you introduce is something that you have to then spend time and cognitive energy for your participants to develop fluency with. So reducing the number of tools, reducing the complexity of the tools that you're using, frees up cognitive space for people to actually do the work.
Maybe for me on the like highly pragmatic side, the things that have made a big difference for me in when I've been playing the role that Michelle's playing is being, at least for me, when the number of people gets above 20, I really can't hold both the facilitation side and the tech side. And even below 20, all of the little adjacent helping behaviors that create a nice textured experience go out the window. It's like, I'm not doing anything in chat. I'm not doing any of the adjacent stuff that creates a welcoming experience for people that has texture and does all the things that we just described. Up to 20, like I feel like I can sort of hold a little integrity around both of it. But as soon as it gets over 20, it's like, nope, there needs to be two of us, one person who's on the tech, one person who's on the other stuff. The other things that made a big difference for me were this like literally seemed like a silly thing, but getting my digital workspace clean. So I literally have 3 tabs open in Chrome and Zoom, and like maintaining a coherent workspace where I'm not trying to flip through everything that's open on my computer at once, like lost, so that when I need to try and find something in the moment, I can find it quickly and easily. That made a big difference for me. And then when we started moving into the like putting up music or putting up the coloring or like that calmed my nervous system down so that I could do the tech side better.
Yeah.
And I think the last thing was when I just finally gave up on trying to bring certain practices online. Like 1-2-4 all, which is a fundamental liberating structure, is like fucking give up on it. It's not that important. Do something else. Do something else that like translates over to digital differently and with less effort and with less like complexity involved. And so I just gave up on a handful of things. I'm like, I'm not even gonna try and move that online. It doesn't seem worth it.
Yeah. The simplicity thing and the clearing the digital workspace thing also reminds me, because I'm working with people. I'm helping to run a digital conference tomorrow, a virtual conference tomorrow, which is going to be an exciting time for all of us. But it's mostly for people in tech, and so they're like, so I've got my 3 monitors, and I've got my this, that, and the other, and I'm just like, I run everything off of my single laptop screen here because I can't rely on my participants to have anything more complicated than that. And also, if I have more windows than that, my brain is all over the place and I can't be with people. So yeah, for me, it's all about, I've got the one screen, I'm in gallery view. When I'm tech hosting, I've got my storyboard, I've printed out because I do it on paper because that's more bandwidth. I don't have to look at it on the screen. I've got my 2 pastes, right? I've just got a document that's all the stuff I'm going to be pasting in chat as I'm going. And I've got my back channel to my host, right, which is either text or a Slack channel or something like that, and everything else is closed. I mean, I'm one of those people who closes every tab in my browser at the end of every day, which allows me to keep my brain clear. And so it's I think massively simplifying your own setup then allows you to keep it simpler for your participants as well, allows you to be more present for them.
There's certain things that are like very, very, they were completely born out of necessity that we've discovered are really nice. So like when we do have 2 of us working together, which you all know is like most often, that's most of the time. When one of us is doing the breakout groups and the other person is managing the other piece, I kind of love to hang out and just everybody just sits and looks at each other and like there's like quiet, and I just think it's love. This is like the therapist in me. Like I'm like, hold the silence, everybody just enjoy the space. And Fisher was like, oh dear God, I have to perform, and he would just like spit out like dad jokes between like every pause, and I was like rearranging the impromptu networking. So the whole reason we even started doing those coloring pages and the music stuff was because he felt so awkward between things. And so it's a really nice example of a very simple thing that you can do to create, there's like a pleasantness for the participants that requires almost no effort on the part of, the other person. So there's the host that has to do the breakout manual stuff. And then there's the second person who can be doing that kind of sweet textural stuff. And if you got 3 or 4 people and everybody's got co-hosting, like you can all the sweet stuff can be,
Those are my favorites, where you've actually got like, when we were doing something with Nancy White, we were doing one of the reconstruct, deconstruct things, or deconstruct, reconstruct, works better in that order, where it was like, she was, interacting with the folks in the fishbowl. We've got one person who's managing the breakout rooms. We've got one person who's who's pasting stuff into chat. We've got other people who are capturing and echoing stuff. And it's like, she's like, this is a luxury, but it's also really to be able to do that, where when you know what it is that you're expected to do, how you are able to help, and having that clear, then yeah, you can really, really make the experience for the participants really nice and seamless.
Yeah, wow, I want you guys to continue to respond here, because there's so many great ideas and thoughts coming up. As you do, I'm going to post into chat here the prompt to our audience who are outside of the fishbowl. What questions, if answered or explored, would help you make progress with tech hosting? Type it in, but don't hit return yet. And please, Fisher, Paul, Anna, please continue. I mean, this is a lovely, lovely conversation. Very helpful, I think, for many of us.
You just want me to show the coloring pages right now?
Oh my God, that would be lovely. I was trying to figure it out the other day. I was like, do I open up the...
It's just a screen share, but then you select that you can play music or the audio in your system. So you have to select the window. Yeah, we can see it.
Can you hear it too? Can you hear the music?
A little bit.
Oh, another participant.
I heard it, but it's like gone now. So he's doing a screen share, and with any screen share that you do, you can annotate. So a lot of people think it's just a whiteboard, but any screen share can be annotated, which is hilarious once everybody figures that out. And then anytime you show a screen, everybody's like graffitiing up every screen that's on, which is, again, it's like, that's that community space that you can create visually, right?
So
You want
to do that,
tell people how to get there?
Yeah, go up to view options at the top of your screen next to that green bar. Scroll down and you'll see a button, an option that says annotate. Once you select that, you'll have some nice drawing tools that you can use.
This is perfect. It's a fishbowl interlude while people are doing their questions.
Yeah.
It's so sweet. I'm such a nerd. I'm like
So
total cynical social worker, but actually really
I know
sweet.
that you've done this at the beginning of your sessions to give people the kind of, we're getting settled, we're coming in sort of space. I'm going to throw a different alternative at you at the group, which I've also done, which I've just kind of learned about from some other practitioners, which is in that, hey, this particularly was a case where we were doing some stuff with training, and we wanted to really make sure that people's technology was set up right. And so what they would do is, they said, hey, we're going to start 10 minutes early, and make sure that you check in, do this, that you'd come in and they'd, immediately do the hi, greet you by name. Can you, make sure that I can't hear you. Could you try getting off mute? That works great. Is your camera working? Okay, great. And then as soon as they walk you through that and everything works, they're like, great, we're just going to put you in a breakout room where there are already some folks here so you can chat with. And then they've moved away into that space so they can start connect with each other, and you're able to help the next few people who are coming in without that. And it's interesting to think about when I might do something like the coloring pages and the music, and when I might do something like that. And it's a different choice.
Yeah, the arrival room thing is really nice. The sort of like staggered arrivals of people. It's a very, very nice option, and it creates a sort of different sense of connection around people.
Yeah, just don't leave people in a breakout room while you get started with the rest.
Right,
we bring them all back. We totally did that.
That happens.
So we did that. That was a nightmare. So it was the second day of a workshop, and the person who was initially tech hosting set up the breakout rooms to send people in as they arrived, and then they transferred tech hosting to me right when we got started, and I didn't know that those rooms were open. So we started the workshop, and it was like 12 minutes in or 13 minutes into the workshop.
It was a long time.
And I clicked the breakout rooms button. I'm like, oh fuck, that's why there's only like 30 people here, is because the other 45 have been in breakout rooms this whole time. It was awful.
You learn more from your mistakes than your
You know,
successes, right?
part of this, I will say, to our collective credit, there was a host transfer while people were in breakouts. So that's a thing. I mean, I don't ever want to change who's hosting if people are in a breakout. Like, it feels like that's definitely going to crash at some point.
Yeah.
But that was mostly successfully done. It was hilarious and horrible.
So I noticed someone's asking, how did you put the images up? This is just a screen share.
Yeah, this is just
Fish is just sharing a screen.
Yeah, this is just an image I found on the internet, and it's
I love
literally in, I can just show you here. So it's literally in a Google tab, just a Google Chrome tab. And then I went into full screen so that you don't see all of the things that I just said I don't do with my computer when I'm tech hosting.
Right. And the graffiti is coming from the annotations. So if you go into the options menu, you can hit annotate, view options, annotate, and then you can just color on there, which is great. I love this.
I think I could show can I show that? Yeah, so to show, now that's showing something else, isn't it? I don't know.
Now it's me.
Now we see your Zoom controls. Oh, look, who's that cool person?
We're stopping. Never mind. Sorry.
Oh, lovely. No, that's amazing. I was trying to figure it out the other day myself, and you guys have just answered it, because I was opening whiteboard and like, can I paste a picture in here?
Yeah, I think that's what most people think, that it's a whiteboard. It's just anytime you share. But I find this hysterical. I think it's all very entertaining. Obviously, I'm just entertained by all of this endlessly. Like, once you open that, I mean, it's like everything gets like, we had a workshop this week. It was a virtual workshop for 2 days. And it was like, anytime we've shared any screen, it just got immediately just like pummeled with stamps, and like you couldn't read it, and we just had to keep clearing it. And it was like so charming and hilarious, but it was their collective, it's how they're, getting in there with each other. It's cool.
So
are you guys ready for a chatter
Yeah.
call here? How are folks feeling on the audience? Let's do it. I'm gonna repost the prompt there in case you need it again. So go, enter in whatever question you have, and our fish will have a look through them.
Can you prevent other participants from sharing their screen if you're not the host? Yes, it's a setting. Oh, I like this. Do you move people to breakout, reconvening them into the main room first? I'm curious to know when we might do one and when we might do the other.
Yeah, this is a structure by structure question, right? So
Yeah.
yes.
Both.
Shift and share, we move the hosts.
Yep.
We used to do impromptu now. So Zoom used to not randomly shuffle people very well. And so you used to have to manually move everybody every time you did an impromptu, which was a freaking nightmare, but kind of entertaining, because you're like, please be forgiving. We're just going to do this. And it was very fun. And with small groups, it's fine, but larger groups. So now you don't have to. You can bring them back and do like the 10-second bring back, and it shuffles people when you hit recreate. Yeah, so it depends on and then sometimes people want to get moved, and then if they're co-hosts, they can move themselves. I just rattled off a lot of things, but depends.
Depends. I try not to move people between rooms, because that is a jarring experience, unless I can't come up with a better way of doing it. I think like shift and share is a great example, where most people are staying in one place, and you have people who've opted into the weird experience of getting moved around. And I think that's better than the alternative. So I think that works reasonably well. But in general, I do often bring people back. I'll also punctuate a little bit about, so like in multi-stage structures, so like for a Triz, where I'm gonna do 3 stages to it, I will often bring people back to the main room just to break between the stages, right? So we'll ask the question about, how do you do the horrible, how do you make your online meetings absolutely horrible? Brainstorm around that. Okay, now I'm gonna bring you back. Okay, what was that like? Do a brief, and then send them back into the same rooms, using the come back to the main room as punctuation to help them navigate through the structure.
I'll talk about the high emotion topics, or I'll get that started. So to me right now, everybody's coming in with really different states of emotions, right? Like there's a collective grief process happening, like we're in a collective trauma through a certain lens. Like there's so a lot of topics that might not typically, you wouldn't anticipate that there would be high emotionality presents high emotionality. So that's happening, I think, for all of us all the time. So this is often more of a design question for me in any moment than specifically related to tech, but it does feel like we've had a few moments in sessions where we needed to respond in different ways. So we anticipate a certain amount of that. And so structures like Conversation Cafe, if you're an LS, if you're familiar with liberating structures, Conversation Cafe is built, it's built for that. Like the choreography of it, the design of it is built for these kinds of conversations and moments. So we're using it a lot because it's helping everybody kind of cool down, ground, and like make space for hearing from one another. We're also doing a lot to try to help people ground in themselves. And that's where the coloring and the music and doing things that invite physicality is really helpful. So there's kind of overall approaches to that. And then I think there are moments, you know, we had a moment in a workshop where, you know, we had a participant come off mute and basically be like, our needs aren't being met. It feels like running over people. Like it was an intervention, and it took, I mean, it was like 100 people in this workshop, and it was a 2-day thing. So for someone to do that was quite a step. Like that person felt that it was very important to do that. And so it's just like if you were in a large workshop in person, if that happens, you have to respond in a way that's really honoring and validating of that experience and figure out a way to do it in such a way that is like really acknowledging and validating live in the moment. And then for all the people that don't feel that way, you're also able to kind of hold it and like move on. So it's a good like broad facilitation question. Hasn't, you know, and then, you know, if you're in a position where you've got 80 people and there's high emotionality and you're trying to hold the tech and you're trying to hold the facilitation, like that's not going to work, right? Like, so you need to have enough people on the team, I think globally in this moment, like with what's happening. And I would say depending on any moment, we're always going to have some of us that are navigating a lot. So I think always kind of need to be prepared for that. And having different structures that help us drop in and hold that more when it's needed is part of what I tend to do. I'm going to mute myself now.
Yeah, I think the one other thing just that's come up around that as well is the technology in many ways, like, at least in my experience, when there's high emotion topics and you're in a room together, getting yourself a break is a lot harder or a lot more intimidating or a lot more difficult to actually give yourself permission to take a break. And it's way easier here to like take care of yourself in certain ways. I think when it comes to, if you're in the middle of something and you need to step away, it's a little bit more, there's a little bit more possibility with that. And we use this little phrase, like, don't forget that there are warm bodies behind the cold machines or the cold screens. I think maybe Paul, that was you who came up with the cold machines thing, or somebody did. But it's the same thing that Anna was emphasizing in the beginning around the spiral journal. And don't forget that there's like infinite digital space, but we all occupy finite physical places. And those finite physical places are still places that we can remember people are in and rely on still. Like all of the interaction does not have to be mediated through the screen. People can interact with other objects and other sensations in their environments when there are things going on. And also, especially if there's high emotion stuff, don't forget the things that Paul was saying, like people's cognitive load. Anna was saying people's cognitive load is super high. So do things in smaller chunks. Like don't try and take it all on during a 5-hour meeting. And when the emotions start getting high in the 4.5, like people's bodies are already fried, their nervous systems are shot. Do these, the gift I think right now is that we can take things on in smaller chunks in ways that feel more, I don't know, it's like there's not as much pressure because we can distribute things over time. It's like all of the healing doesn't have to happen in the 2-day workshop that's happening next week in person. Like It's like you can think of time differently, I guess, is one of the things that's been making a difference for us.
Yeah, I think that asynchronous, synchronous division, right? And looking at that pull between what can happen right in the moment and what can happen, through Slack or through a document that people are reading on their own time, reflecting on their own time, and even introducing an element of asynchronous into a highly structured, engaging space by having an opportunity for people to turn off video and put on headphones and just listen. And Fishbowl is really nice for that, but there's others as well like that.
It's interesting. There's this note about like, okay, so you keep implicitly referring to all the stuff you have to do. So it's like, and this is what's happening in every session that we do. There's the mechanistic side of like, what's the stuff? And I'm like, I think in the last couple minutes, maybe we literally rattle off, like the stuff, right? And from start of design till close out, like just friggin' rattle off as fast as we can. And at the same time that we're holding that collective trauma and emotionality of it. And that's happening in every moment, in every session we're doing. Everybody's trying to learn the mechanics and how to hold this thing, all of this. And I just think that's like, man, no, that's why this is like so challenging and also so important. And okay, tangibles.
I do have one very tangible thing that I want to say that I think I would not want to get out of the bowl without saying this. As a technical host, you will screw up. I prefer to own my mistakes and make it clear, oops, that wasn't supposed to happen. I'm very sorry about that. This is what's going on. So actually, in some ways, like creating, so for even this morning, Stefan was in this. I was tech hosting for coffee that Maggie was running, and I was trying to move a participant got dropped off the call. Everybody was in breakout rooms. They were doing impromptu networking. Came back in. I was like, oh, great. Which group were you with? And she says, I was in breakout room 9. I went, move breakout room 9, close rooms. And so I just ended all of the breakout rooms 75 seconds into this 5-minute process. And there's no undo button in closed breakout rooms. It's you've launched the nuclear missiles and you're just waiting for them to impact. And the 60-second timer is going. And that is, it had been at least months since I had done that, but it happens periodically. And I think it's really important as a technical host to be say, you're probably wondering what all ended up back here 90 seconds into what was supposed to be a 5-minute process. This is what happened. I'm very sorry. We're going to do now. And I think being able to be transparent around that is one of the things that helps me emotionally manage, but also helps reassure the participants. Because if I'm high-strung about the mistakes that I inevitably make, it's just going to make the experience emotionally worse for them. So that is the thing that I wanted to say before getting out of the bowl.
My version of that, Paul, is the somebody's talking and I know we're about to open breakout rooms and I'm hovering over the breakout room button and then like my finger slips and it cuts them off and everybody goes to the breakout rooms.
That person
on more than one occasion.
I'm the one.
More than one occasion.
I'm the one he cuts off every time we go to breakout rooms, just to be clear. And that's fine. It's only horrifying when it's a participant. Okay, we're at 50. So anyway, the tangible tech stuff starts at the beginning of your design process with like settings and stuff, and then moves all the way to the very end. So it's there the whole time. So all the stuff is like responding to chats, setting up breakout rooms while everybody else is talking. Michelle's been setting up the troikas probably, like moving people around so that like, your co-host isn't in a troika because you want to make sure that they're back in the main room when they can be, like all of that kind of stuff.
And making sure that you've actually arranged with them. So like I got a board this morning that was great. So we're going to do these structures for this amount of time. And I was like, great. How many people do you want in each breakout room? What timing do you want? Do you want me to give them a timer? What amount of countdown timer do you want them to have when they come back? I noticed that, and this is a different group I was dealing with, where it's like, I noticed that you have 80 minutes worth of activities in a 70-minute time block on your schedule. How do we want to handle that? Because as the person who is handling all of those things, I tend to be the person who notices the failures of planning, and I'm going to be on the receiving end if we don't actually deal with it. So yeah, that, like, really making sure that you've also got that communication plan back and forth between your with you and your sort of front of room host is important.
Lovely. Yeah, I mean, so much of what you guys are saying, it's like we're all practicing and figuring this out as we go, and these tips are so helpful just in terms of co-hosting and hosting and all of these things. I mean, it's lovely. And in order to keep our process moving on within our time constraints, we can't dig into everything. I'd love to spend this whole time just digging into this, but then the participants wouldn't get a chance to work with each other through some of their questions, some of their solutions that they're thinking about for themselves based on this conversation so far. So I'm going to transition us out of the fishbowl exercise here and that lovely conversation. And Michelle, did you have anything to add there?
Yes. So from the tech side, I just want to let you know that yes, you can plan these breakout rooms as much as you want, but now I'm getting a whole bunch of private chats that, oh, I have to go, and oh, I have to go, I'm leaving now. Yes. So I just want to let everybody know that if I had a coloring page guru or a somebody else guru, I might pop that up right now. Well, I would just move and exchange a few more people that seem to be now in rooms of 2. So I want to share a tip while I people around here.
So what Michelle is talking about, one of the things to think about in your design is how fragile of a structure are you trying to use? How much does it rely on having exactly the right number of people in a breakout room? How much does it rely on certain prompts being able to give in at the right times? Those might not be the right choices in moment. So for example, I've been doing a lot of impromptu networking within triads. I mean, impromptu networking is normally 2, but that means if I'm putting people into a group of 3 and someone's connection drops, you don't have one person, you don't have 6 groups of 1 people going, oh, what do we do? Similarly, like kind of what she's pointing at is that you're going to have to make just-in-time decisions about stuff. Recognize that that's a reality and think about that in terms of I mean, again, this is tech stuff, but it influences the design. Designing for resilience.
Yes, it's something that absolutely would not happen in a physical setting. You wouldn't have to be moving people from.
Well, sometimes you do, but
but it's this very tangible movement of people, and then they suddenly disappear. So all of that, and so another thing that happens when hosts and tech hosts are sharing that I've noticed in the community is while the host is basically describing the structure and kind of working through how the steps and sequences are going to work, the tech host is in the background beginning to kind of build the breakout rooms and beginning to think through, that whole process, right? And that, like Paul's saying, it shifts as people are leaving or coming or going or whatever. So I'm gonna give Michelle some time here and describe.
Practice showing.
Sorry, I thought I had it again.
Yeah. Practice, Stefan, this is perfect. Practice, find a coloring page, pop it up there, this is a great moment for you to learn how to do it.
Okay.
So
we can send you our doc too.
So, I mean, this is, people are kind of staying and then some people are going. I think what I'm just going to do is I can't control if people want to stay or go at this point, and I think time is going. So I know I'm the tech host, but I'm going to jump into the facilitation host right now for a second and just let you guys know that I'm going to send you into the breakout rooms. If you have a group of 2, I might join you. Unfortunately, it was such an interesting conversation last time that I forgot to go back to the main room. But we can try different things like that. I think we're not going to have the perfect numbers. It's mostly 3. There might be 1, 2. If everyone's okay with that, Fisher, Anna, Paul, I've split you up because I think you guys have great ideas to share. This is fun, and yeah, for everybody else who's been writing in the chat, I'd love a transcript of the chat. Yes, I'm going to clean up the chat. I'm going to send it to everyone. Yes, we're going to have a recording, which is going to go off very shortly. And all the questions that are not answered, what my plan is to extract them all, put them in a Google Doc with Stefan, answer the ones that we have the answers from this session, and then leave them open for all of us to answer as we learn together, ongoing. So hopefully we can all take responsibility for that. Okay, is everybody ready to be opened up?
Oh, maybe just before we do that, Michelle, the 15% solution bit, just so people can think through before we get into the breakout on their own. I'll get the coloring page up here. Folks can draw and think on their 15% solution. So if you go to slide number 9, there's a brief description
in the chat. I'm going to put it in the chat if it's not already there by some other brilliant person.
That'd be lovely. So for this structure here, it's a lovely one. A 15% solution is something that you can do right away without needing any more freedom, resources, permission, authority, or control, where you have discretion and freedom to act right now. So the